It was almost midnight, and the streets outside Daniel's small apartment were silent. The city had a strange kind of stillness at that hour, as if the world was holding its breath. Daniel sat on his old couch, reading news on his tablet, when a sudden knock came at his door. It was soft at first, like someone testing if he was awake. He frowned, wondering who would visit at this time. The knock came again, this time quicker, sharper, and more urgent. He stood up slowly, his heart beating. A little faster in his building, visitors at night usually meant trouble. Daniel glanced through the peephole, but saw nothing except the faint outline of someone standing very close to the door. For a moment, he thought about ignoring it, but then he heard a voice, soft, shaking, almost like a whisper. I can cook. I can clean. I can be quiet. He froze, unsure if he had heard right. It wasn't the kind of thing you heard from a stranger in the middle of the night. The voice came again, this time with more desperation. Please, let me in. Something in the tone cut through his hesitation. Daniel unlocked the door, opening it just enough to see the person outside. She was young, maybe in her early 20s, but clearly not human. Her skin had a faint silvery glow under the dim hallway light, and her eyes reflected the light like an animal's, bright and sharp. She wore a simple gray coat that was too big for her, and she clutched a small worn-out bag. Her face was pale, her lips trembling as if she had been running for a long time before Daniel could speak. She stepped closer, looking over her shoulder, as if she expected someone to be right behind her. I can work. I won't make noise. I can't go back, she said, her voice breaking. Daniel glanced past her into the dark hallway and caught sight of a shadow moving near the stairwell. Someone was there, watching. A cold feeling ran down his spine. He didn't know this girl, didn't know her story, but the danger in the air was real. Without thinking, he pulled her inside and shut the door quickly. Locking it twice, the girl pressed her back to the wall. Breathing hard, her eyes darted around the apartment as if searching for escape routes. Daniel stepped back, keeping a safe distance. Who are you? He asked. She hesitated, then said softly, My name is Lyra. Her voice was melodic but heavy with fear. She didn't offer a last name, and Daniel didn't push. What's going on? Who's out there? He pressed. Instead of answering, Lyra moved to the window and peeked through the blinds. Her body went stiff, and her glowing eyes narrowed. They found me, she whispered, almost to herself. Daniel followed her gaze, but saw only the quiet street. Who? He asked, his voice low. She turned to face him, her expression a mix of fear and determination. If they know I'm here, they'll take you too. Daniel felt his stomach twist. He had no idea what she meant, but the way she said it made him believe her. Outside, a faint hum reached his ears, like the sound of an engine hovering nearby. Lyra's grip tightened on her bag, and she took a step closer to him. Please, just let me stay here tonight. Tomorrow, I can leave. He didn't answer right away. His mind raced with questions. Was she a criminal? A runaway? Why did she look almost human, but not quite? Yet some part of him already knew he wouldn't send her away. He looked at her again, at the way she was trying not to cry, at the faint glow of her skin, and at the door, behind which danger was waiting. Fine, he said finally, but if this is some kind of trouble, it is. She interrupted, but I'll keep you safe if you let me stay. Her words didn't make sense, but there was a strange conviction in them. Daniel sighed and motioned toward the couch. She sat down slowly, as if still expecting him to change. His mind for a while, neither of them spoke. The sound outside faded, and the building returned to its midnight silence. Daniel leaned back against the wall, watching her from a distance. She seemed exhausted but alert, her gaze always shifting to the window or the door. It was clear she wasn't used to feeling safe. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, But one thing was certain, the moment he opened his door to her. His life had already started to change. Morning light crept slowly into Daniel's apartment. The city outside was waking up, but inside, the air was still heavy with the tension from the night before. Daniel stood in the small kitchen, pouring himself a cup of coffee, his mind replaying the moment Lyra had appeared at his door. She was still asleep on the couch, curled up with her bag clutched to her chest like it was the most important thing she owned. He studied her quietly, even in sleep. She didn't seem peaceful. Her brows were drawn together, and her breathing was uneven. Her skin's silvery glow was faint in the daylight. Almost human-looking now, but her hair shimmered with a metallic sheen that caught the sun. Daniel couldn't deny she was different, and not just in appearance. As the coffee machine clicked off, Lyra stirred, her eyes opening slowly. For a moment, she looked confused, like she had forgotten where she was. Then her gaze landed on him, and she sat up quickly, hugging her bag tighter. "You didn't leave," she said softly, as if the idea of him abandoning her was more believable than him staying. Daniel sipped his coffee, leaning against the counter. "I live here," he said simply. "But you? You still haven't told me why you came to my door." Lyra looked down at her lap, her fingers running over the frayed strap of her bag. "I needed somewhere safe," she said, her voice calm but with a shadow of fear behind it. "Safe from who?" He pressed, her eyes flicked toward the window, scanning the street below before answering. "From the people who bought me." Daniel nearly choked on his coffee. "Bought you? What do you mean?" She hesitated, then met his eyes. "Where?" "I come from. Families can sell their children if they owe debts. My family owed a lot, so they gave me away." Daniel felt a cold anger stir inside him. "That's insane," he said. "It's common," she replied quietly, "especially for girls who can work in homes, or worse places." Her gaze drifted to the floor, and for a moment, Daniel saw the weight of everything she had endured. He wanted to ask more, but a distant sound caught both their attention, the low hum of a hover engine. Lyra stiffened, moving toward the window. She peeked through the blinds and froze. "There," she whispered, pointing. Across the street, a sleek black hover car was parked, its tinted windows making it impossible to see who was inside. Daniel's first thought was coincidence, but the way Lyra's hand shook told him otherwise. "They know I'm here," she said, her voice trembling, but her jaw set. With determination. "How?" he asked. "They have trackers, scents, watchers. I don't know which one, but I can't stay here much longer." Daniel moved away from the window, his mind racing. "You can't just keep running forever," he said. Lyra's lips curved into a small, sad smile. "That's what I've been doing for months," she replied, "running, hiding, cooking meals for strangers in exchange for a few nights of shelter, cleaning empty houses until my hands bled, staying quiet so no one would notice me." Her words echoed in his head. It was one thing to let someone spend the night, another to realize they had no home to go back to. Daniel glanced at the door, then at her bag. "What's in there?" he asked. She tightened her grip. "Everything I have left," she said. "Clothes, a few credits, and this." She slowly pulled out a small crystal about the size of a plum. It glowed faintly blue, pulsing like a heartbeat. Daniel had never seen anything like it. "What is it?" he asked. "It's my lifeline," she said simply. "And the reason they'll never stop chasing me." He wanted to touch it, but the way she held it told him it was more than just valuable. It was personal before he could ask more. The sound of the hovercar's engine grew louder. It wasn't moving away. "They're coming closer," Lyra said sharply, already standing. Daniel felt the air shift, his quiet morning replaced by the same urgency from last night. He glanced at the door, then back at her. "Do you have a plan?" She nodded once, her glowing eyes meeting his. "Stay away from the windows, and whatever happens, don't open the door unless I say." Her sudden change in tone from frightened to commanding made him pause. "Who exactly are you?" "Lyra?" he asked. She hesitated, then answered in a voice that was calm but cold. "I was trained to serve." But I was also trained to survive. Before Daniel could react, a sharp knock rattled the door. It was not the hesitant tap from last night, but a firm, heavy thud that made the wood vibrate. Both of them froze, listening. Then a voice came from the other side, low, smooth, and dangerous. "Lyra." Opened the door. Daniel felt a chill run through him. Whoever was out there knew her name. And from the look in Lyra's eyes, she knew exactly who it was. The morning had just turned into a trap. The heavy knock on the door didn't come again. Whoever had been outside left after a few tense minutes. But the silence that followed was not comforting. Daniel stayed still for a while, listening to the hum of the hovercar fade into the distance. Only when Lyra stepped away from the door did he allow himself to breathe again. "You're not telling me everything," he said quietly. Lyra didn't answer. Instead, walking toward the small kitchen, she placed her worn bag carefully on the table and began opening cabinets. Daniel watched, confused. "What are you doing?" he asked. "You let me stay?" she replied without looking at him. "So I'll make breakfast." Her tone was calm, almost normal, as if the danger outside didn't exist. She found a pan, tested its weight in her hand, and then pulled a few small packets from her bag. The smell that came from them was strange but pleasant, a mix of something sweet, earthy, and a little spicy. Daniel leaned on the doorway, still cautious but curious. "You carry food around with you?" "It's safer than trusting others to feed me," she said simply. Her movements were precise, almost graceful. She cracked an egg-like shell into the pan. The inside shimmered faintly, like liquid silver, and then added herbs from a small pouch. Within minutes, the apartment filled with a warm, comforting aroma that made Daniel's stomach growl. He sat down at the small table while she cooked. The morning light caught her hair, and for the first time he noticed that it wasn't just metallic in sheen. It shifted in color slightly when she moved. Sometimes silver, sometimes pale gold. She placed a plate in front of him without a word, then sat opposite him with her own portion. Daniel took a cautious bite. The flavor was unlike anything he had tasted before. It was rich, layered, with a sweetness that lingered at the edges. He found himself eating faster than he expected. "This is actually amazing," he said. Surprised, a small smile touched Lyra's lips, but it faded quickly. "You eat too quickly," she said softly. "It's bad for your health." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You're cooking for me and giving me health advice now?" "It's part of what I do," she replied. "Cooking, cleaning, caring for someone. It's how I survive." Her words carried weight, and Daniel found himself setting his fork down. "You said last night they bought you. Was it for this?" Her eyes darkened. "At first, yes," she said. "But they had other plans. Worse plans. I ran before they could carry them out." Daniel wanted to press for details, but he could see in her face that she wasn't ready to share more. "Instead," he asked, "and the crystal you showed me? That's connected to them?" Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "It's mine, but it's also a signal. If they get close enough, they can find it." Daniel frowned. "Then why keep it?" "Because without it, I'm not me," she said, her hand resting protectively on her bag. Daniel didn't fully understand, but he let it go. They ate in silence for a while. But the peaceful moment ended when Daniel glanced toward the window. The black hovercar was back, parked in the same spot across the street. This time, the faint shape of someone sitting inside was visible. "Don't look," Lyra said quickly, noticing his gaze. "They're watching us." He asked. "Yes," she replied, her voice tight. "They won't come in during daylight. Not unless they're sure I'm alone. But they're waiting. Daniel's jaw tightened. "So, what's your plan?" "You said you'd leave today." "I'll go," she said, standing to clear the plates, "but not yet. It's safer if we move when they expect it the least." He followed her into the kitchen. "You can't just keep running forever." He said, "I've been running for months," she replied quietly. "Every day is about finding somewhere to sleep and someone who won't betray me for credits." She began washing the dishes, her movements quick and practiced. It was strange. She looked more at home in his kitchen than he did. Daniel sighed. Leaning against the counter, "Why come to me?" "I didn't choose," she said. "I was running. I saw a light in your apartment, and I knocked. You opened the door. No one else would have." Her simple words hit him harder than he expected. He thought about how close he had been to ignoring that knock, and how different this morning would be if he had. The low hum of the hovercar's engine drifted into the apartment again. It was a constant reminder that danger was still outside. Daniel glanced at Lyra, wondering if she was as calm as she seemed or if she was just used to living in fear. Either way, he knew one thing. Letting her walk back out into the street alone didn't feel like the right choice anymore. Lyra finished cleaning and turned to him. "I'll need your help to get out of here," she said simply. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And what happens if I say no?" Her gaze held his steadily. "Then I leave and they take me. And when they do, I'll make sure you disappear too, because you helped me." Daniel stared at her, trying to tell if she was bluffing, but there was no fear in her tone now. Only certainty. Whatever world she came from, its rules were far harsher than his outside. The hovercar's engine went silent. That quiet was worse than the sound itself. It meant whoever was inside had made a decision. The silence outside felt heavy. Daniel stood near the window, careful to keep out of sight. The black hovercar that had been parked across the street was gone. But that didn't make him feel safe. If anything, it made his skin prickle. "They're moving," Lyra said quietly. She was by the door, bag slung over her shoulder, eyes sharp and focused. "They won't knock again. They'll try to catch me between here and wherever I run next." Daniel frowned. "You said you have a plan." She nodded. "We leave now, but not through the front." Daniel grabbed his jacket, still unsure why he was getting involved in this. Part of him told himself he should just let her go. Let this be her fight. But another part, the part that had pulled her inside last night, couldn't just send her out alone. Lyra led him to the back of the apartment, where a narrow maintenance hallway ran behind the building. "This leads to the old storage tunnels," she said. "They haven't been used for years, but they connect to the other side of the block." Daniel hesitated. "And you know about them because—" She glanced over her shoulder. "Because hiding places are the first thing you learn when you're hunted." The hallway smelled of dust and rust. Their footsteps echoed softly as they moved. Daniel kept glancing behind them, expecting to hear boots or the hum of a hover engine instead. He heard only the distant drip of water somewhere in the dark. They reached a locked metal door at the end. Lyra pulled a thin strip of metal from her bag and worked the lock with practiced hands. It clicked open in seconds. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You're full of surprises." She didn't smile. "I had to be." Beyond the door was a narrow concrete tunnel, lit only by faint emergency strips along the walls. The air was cooler here. They moved quickly, their footsteps quickening with every echo behind them. Daniel thought it was just his imagination. Until Lyra froze. "They're here," she whispered. A faint hum grew louder, the sound of small hover drones. "They must have picked up my signal," Lyra said. Pulling out the glowing crystal from her bag, its blue light was brighter. Now, pulsing faster, Daniel stared. "I thought you said that thing keeps you alive." "It does," she replied, "but it also makes me a beacon." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small black disc. It unfolded into a thin sheet of metal, which she wrapped around the crystal. The pulsing light dimmed instantly. They'll lose the signal for a few minutes. We have to. Move they ran, the tunnel twisting left and right. Every sound seemed louder, their breaths, their steps. The faint worry of drones somewhere behind, Daniel could feel adrenaline pushing him forward. He didn't know where this tunnel ended, but he trusted Lyra knew after several turns. They reached a large, rusted grate. Through it, Daniel could see daylight and the distant shapes of loading cranes. "A warehouse district," he said. "Yes." She replied, "From here, we can reach the spaceport." But as she started to climb through, a voice echoed down the tunnel behind them. It was the same smooth, dangerous voice from earlier. "Lyra, you've run far enough." Daniel's blood ran cold. Lyra froze for half a second, then shoved her bag toward him. "Go," she said firmly. "I'll distract them. Not a chance." Daniel shot back, grabbing her arm. "You said they'd take me too, so I'm not leaving." The voice grew closer, footsteps now joining it. Lyra's jaw tightened. "Fine," she said, "but we move together." They pushed through the grate, the metal groaning under their weight. Outside, the air smelled of oil and metal. The warehouse district was quiet, the tall storage buildings casting long shadows. Daniel scanned the area. "No one's here." "They're here," Lyra corrected. "You just can't see them yet." They moved along the edge of the buildings, staying in the shadows every few steps. Lyra glanced behind them. Daniel noticed her hand hovering near her bag. "You have something in there you're not telling me about," he said. She gave a small, grim nod. "If it comes to it, you'll see." The hum of the hover car returned, this time closer. It glided into the narrow street between two warehouses. Blocking the path ahead, the doors opened, and two tall figures stepped out, their faces hidden behind reflective visors. Daniel's pulse spiked. "What now?" he asked. Lyra's eyes narrowed now. "We run." They darted into a side alley, the sound of boots pounding the pavement behind them. Daniel didn't look back. He didn't need to. The shouts and metallic clangs told him their pursuers were close. They rounded a corner, and Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him into a half-collapsed storage building. Inside, it was dark, dust swirling in the air. "Quiet," she whispered. "Let them pass." The heavy footsteps grew louder, then stopped. Right outside, Daniel's breath caught through a gap in the wall. He saw one of the figures scanning the area, a faint red light sweeping back and forth. After a long, tense moment, they moved on. Lyra exhaled slowly. "They'll circle back," she said. "We have minutes." Daniel didn't know what was ahead, but he knew one thing. Whatever this was, it wasn't just Lyra's fight anymore. They stayed inside the half-collapsed storage building until the sounds outside faded. Only then did Lyra motion for Daniel to follow her. They slipped out the back, keeping low, moving between stacks of rusted cargo containers. The smell of oil and metal clung to the air, and the distant hum of machinery reminded Daniel that the warehouse district was still active. Just not here, not in this forgotten part. "We need a place they won't think to check," Lyra said quietly. Daniel glanced around. "This whole area looks like no one's been here in years." She shook her head. "They know the obvious hiding spots. We need somewhere even the locals avoid." They headed toward the edge of the district, where the buildings gave way to cracked pavement and tall, swaying weeds. The air grew colder here, the wind carrying the faint metallic temps of the city's outer wall. Lyra stopped in front of a long-abandoned cargo warehouse, its wide doors bent and rusted. "This will do," she said. Inside, the air was stale and dusty. Dim light leaked through holes in the roof, illuminating stacks of crates covered in cobwebs. The echo of their footsteps made the place feel bigger than it was. Lyra moved quickly, checking corners, making sure no one else was there. Finally, she set her bag down on an old wooden crate. Daniel looked around. "This is your safe place. It's quiet, it's empty, and it's far from the main streets," she replied. "That's all we need for now." He sat on a crate opposite hers, watching as she pulled the crystal from her bag. Its faint blue light glowed in the dimness. "I thought you said that thing makes you easy to find," he said. "It does," she admitted. "But I can shield it here from the bottom of her bag." She took out a thin sheet of woven metal and wrapped it tightly around the crystal. The glow dimmed until it disappeared completely. "Without the signal, they'll have to search the old-fashioned way," she said, "and that gives us time." Daniel leaned forward. "You said before that without it, you're not you. What did you mean?" She hesitated, then sat down across from him, her voice low. "This crystal. It's part of me, not my body, but my identity. It's proof of who I am on my world. Without it, I'm nothing there. No rights, no name, no place." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "And they want it because with it, they can claim me legally." She said bitterly, "On my planet, possession of the crystal means possession of the person." The thought made Daniel's stomach turn. "So they don't just want you, they want ownership." Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the dusty floor. "I escaped before the final bond could be made. That's why they'll never stop." Daniel let the words sink in. He thought about Earth's own history, about slavery and power, and how some things never seem to change, no matter the planet. "Then we can't let them take you," he said firmly. Her eyes flicked up to meet his. And for a moment, something softened in her expression. The wind outside howled through a gap in the wall, and Lyra moved to check it through the opening. Daniel could see the faint lights of the city in the distance. From here, it felt like they were in another world entirely. The tension of the chase had faded just enough for the exhaustion to settle in. She returned and sat beside him, pulling a small packet from her bag. "What's that?" He asked. "Dried food from home," she said, handing him a piece. It was chewy, sweet, and slightly salty, unlike anything he had tasted before. They ate in silence for a few minutes. The quiet, strangely comforting Daniel finally asked, "What happens next?" "We can't just hide here forever. I have an old ally," she said. "Someone who can get me off-world, but I need to reach the spaceport without being seen." "That's easier said than done," Daniel muttered. Lyra gave a faint smile. "I didn't say it was easy, but it's possible." They talked quietly, making rough plans. She would guide him through the less-known parts of the outskirts. Avoiding main streets and surveillance zones, the crystal would stay shielded until the very last moment, and if they were cornered. Lyra had something in her bag that she promised would buy them time. Though she didn't say what, outside, the wind shifted, carrying a faint mechanical hum. Daniel tensed, but Lyra shook her head. Not them, just the wall patrol. He let out a slow breath. Still, he knew they couldn't stay here long. Hiding was only delaying the inevitable. Lyra adjusted the metal sheet around the crystal one last time and tucked it deep into her bag. "Tomorrow, we move," she said quietly. "Before they get too close again." Daniel nodded. The warehouse might be safe for now, but the hunt wasn't over. And tomorrow would decide whether they escaped or were caught. The night in the old warehouse was cold and restless. Daniel slept in short bursts, every sound making him open his eyes. He could hear the faint creak of metal in the walls and the whisper of wind through the roof gaps. Sometimes he thought he heard footsteps outside, but when he sat up there, was only silence. Lyra didn't sleep much either. She sat near the far wall, knees pulled close. Her bag always within reach, the faint glimmer of her eyes in the dark told Daniel she was listening. Waiting. When morning came, she was already moving. Checking the street outside through a small crack in the wall. "They were close last night," she said softly. Daniel sat up, rubbing his eyes. "How close?" She hesitated, close enough to hear them. He frowned. Then we can't wait for nightfall to move. She shook her head. No. We leave now. While the patrols change, it's the only window we'll get. Daniel stood, slipping on his jacket as he did. He noticed something in her face, a flicker of doubt. What aren't you telling me? He asked. Her gaze shifted toward the city skyline. If we try for the spaceport, they'll know. It's the obvious move, but it's the only way off-world, right? Yes, she said, which is why it's also the most dangerous. Daniel crossed his arms. So what's the alternative? Hide forever. Her lips pressed into a thin line. If I go alone, I can slip through more easily. Daniel's answer was immediate. No, not happening. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. You've already risked enough. For me, if they catch you, they won't, he cut in. I'm not letting you walk into this alone. There was a long pause, the only sound the faint groan of the wind outside. Finally, Lyra exhaled slowly. Then you'll need to know what we're up against from her bag. She pulled out a small device and set it on the floor between them. When she pressed a button, a faint blue hologram appeared, the outline of a sleek black ship, its sharp edges glowing faintly. That's the vessel they use to track me. She explained. Daniel studied it. It doesn't look huge. It doesn't have to be, she replied. It carries elite hunters, each one trained to capture or kill targets like me. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. And you think? We can get past them. Her eyes met his. If we're smart, yes. If we're lucky, yes. If we're neither. No, the weight of the situation pressed on him. He could still walk away, leave her here. Pretend none of this had happened. It would be safer, easier. But the thought of her facing those hunters alone made his chest tighten. All right, he said finally. We do this together. A small spark lit in her eyes. Then I'll trust you with this, she said. Reaching into her bag again, she pulled out a flat black object wrapped in cloth. When she unwrapped it, Daniel saw what looked like a curved blade made of translucent metal. It caught the light like glass, but hummed faintly with energy. What is that? He asked. A last resort, she said. It's not meant for killing. It disrupts their armor. Buys us seconds. He took it carefully, feeling a faint vibration in the handle. And you're giving this to me? You'll need it if. I'm cornered, she said simply. Daniel stared at the blade, then at her. This is more than just running to the spaceport, isn't it? She didn't answer right away. When we get there, I'll have to pass through a gate that reads my crystal if they intercept me before that. It's over. He nodded slowly, understanding the risk now in full. Then we make sure they don't intercept you, he said. They gathered their things quickly, keeping movements quiet, before leaving. Lyra checked the shielding around the crystal one more time, making sure no light escaped. Then they slipped out into the cold morning. The city's distant hum carrying on the wind. The outskirts were nearly empty at this hour. They kept to alleys and narrow streets, avoiding main roads every now and then. Lyra would stop suddenly, listening, her head tilting slightly as if she could hear something Daniel couldn't, twice. She pulled him into shadowed corners just before a patrol drone passed overhead after nearly an hour of moving. They reached a low ridge where they could see the spaceport in the distance. It was a sprawling field of landing pads and hangars, the air above shimmering with the heat of engines. That's it, Lyra said, her voice low. From here on, we're in their net. Daniel glanced at her. You ready? She took a deep breath. No, but I'll go anyway. As they started down toward the outer fence, a faint hum grew behind them. Daniel turned, his heart sinking. A sleek black hovercraft was sliding silently between the buildings. Its tinted windows glinted in the pale light. They found us, Lyra said, her voice steady but urgent. Daniel tightened his grip on the curved blade. Then let's make them regret it. The black hovercraft closed the distance fast. Its engines gave off a low, steady hum. Like a predator breathing before the strike, Daniel and Lyra were halfway down the ridge. The spaceport, so close, they could almost hear the distant roar of ships taking off, but the sound of the hovercraft swallowed everything. They're going to cut us off before we reach the fence, Daniel said. Lyra's eyes scanned the area quickly, calculating there's no cover out here. If we run in a straight line, they'll catch us. Then we don't run in a straight line, Daniel replied, gripping the curved blade tighter. The hovercraft swerved suddenly, sliding ahead of them, its black surface reflecting the pale light. Two tall figures stepped out, their reflective visors hiding their faces, their movements precise. One of them spoke, voice low and smooth. Lyra. It's time to come home. Lyra's jaw tightened. I was never your property, she said, her voice cold. The second figure tilted their heads slightly. You have no choice. Daniel stepped forward. She's not going anywhere with you. The first figure turned their visor toward him. You're a human. You have no part in this. Daniel smirked. Funny, I didn't ask for permission. They moved suddenly, faster than Daniel expected. One reached for Lyra, while the other came toward him. Daniel swung the curved blade, the metal humming in his grip, when it connected with the figure's armor. A ripple of blue light burst out, the hunter staggering back a step. It wasn't enough to stop them, but it broke their rhythm. Lyra moved like liquid lightning, pulling a small sphere from her bag and slamming it against the ground. A bright flash filled the air, blinding the hunters for a moment. Go, she shouted, grabbing Daniel's arm. They ran hard, the spaceport fence growing closer with every step. Behind them, the hunters recovered, their footsteps pounding the ground. Daniel's lungs burned, but he didn't slow down. The curved blade still hummed in his hand, ready for another strike. The fence loomed ahead, tall and lined with scanning gates. Lyra pulled the crystal from her bag, stripping away the shielding in one quick motion. Its blue glow flared bright, pulsing like a heartbeat. The gate nearest them beeped and slid open. Recognizing her identity, go through, she said, shoving him forward. Daniel hesitated. Looking back, the hunters were almost on them. Lyra, go, she snapped, her voice sharper than he'd ever heard. He stepped through the gate, and the air shimmered around him. Lyra followed, but as soon as she crossed, one of the hunters lunged. Grabbing her arm, she twisted, using the momentum to slam the crystal against their visor. The light from it flared so bright, Daniel had to look away. When he looked back, the hunter had fallen to one knee, their armor sparking. Security drones from the spaceport swooped in, their metallic voices echoing. Unregistered armed entry detected. Stand down. The hunters stepped back, knowing they couldn't fight both the drones and the gate's defenses. The one who had spoken before pointed at Lyra. This isn't over, they said. Lyra's voice was calm but final. It is for you. The hunters retreated, slipping back into the black hovercraft, which lifted silently into the sky. Daniel and Lyra stood just inside the spaceport, breathing hard. You did it, he said. We did it, she corrected, a faint smile on her lips. They moved quickly through the spaceport, guided by automated signs. Lyra led him toward a smaller docking bay on the far side. Inside, a sleek silver ship waited, its engines already powered up. A tall figure stood at the ramp, their features hidden under a hood. Is this him? The stranger asked, their voice low. Yes, Lyra said simply. He's coming with us. Daniel hesitated, glancing back toward the gates. Earth was right there, his home, his life, everything familiar. But beyond the ramp was a chance to escape the danger, and something told him this was more than just running. It was the start of something new. Lyra stepped closer, her voice softer now. I can cook, I can clean. "I can be quiet," she whispered. The same words she had said the night they met, but this time there was no fear in her voice. "Only warmth," Daniel smiled, "and I can watch." "You're back." She held out her hand. He took it. They walked up the ramp together. The ship's doors closing behind them through the small window. Daniel saw the spaceport shrinking below. The engines roared, the stars above growing brighter. Lyra stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the endless black beyond. "Where are we going?" he asked. "Somewhere they can't follow," she said. The ship tilted upward, breaking free from the atmosphere. Earth fell away beneath them. And Daniel